Well, so here I am in the Philippines today, and we've been, of course, invited by Ford over here. Now, why have they invited us? Well, because Ford is one of the largest manufacturers of SUVs across the globe. They have cars like the Ecosport in India, of course, and they also make the Kuga, which is very popular in the UK as well as Europe. And they also make the F-150, which is the best-selling car in the US. And they've, of course, called us over here to sample a lot of those cars, including the Kuga. So let's jump into one of them and figure out what these cars are all about. In terms of the looks, the Kuga looks sharp, youthful as well as very sporty, and the overall design is very well balanced as well. In terms of the interiors, the Kuga's back seat deserves special mention because this seat is pretty wide and has plenty of place in terms of headroom as well as knee room for even the tallest of tall passengers. And what's more, even the boot is very big and is pretty well shaped as well. And the best part is that there is no loading sill, so heaving in those heavy bags should not be an issue at all. Well, so we've been driving around the Ford Escape, which is also the Kuga in most markets, and this is the first car that we have driven today. And at the moment, as you can see around me, I am stuck in city traffic. But let me just quickly tell you about this car. This is, of course, the petrol version that we are driving. It's the Ecoboost engine, and the red line says that it can go all the way up to 7,000 RPM, which is pretty good for a petrol motor. And this is a car that, if Ford ever does bring to India, will rival the likes of the Hyundai Tucson.
The street and some goats and some animals. Thank you.
Well, so that was our lead car, just telling us to be careful of goats and some animals on the road. So really driving in the Philippines isn't that different from driving in India. Of course, you drive on this side of the road rather than the left side, but as the warnings just suggested, it is very similar to what we face on Indian roads. So we are driving the petrol motor, which is a very peppy motor, and it loves to be revved. It's very responsive, and even when you rev it hard, it is pretty silent inside the cabin. It's a very well insulated cabin, and people who have been driving Ford cars in India, especially if you are someone who has driven the EcoSport, will find this cabin to be somewhat of a familiar place because the gauges are pretty similar to the EcoSport, and even the AC vents are pretty similar in their design and overall feel. But where this car is definitely ahead of the current EcoSport in India is in the quality, and you also get this huge touchscreen over here, which the EcoSport does not get at the moment in India. So you will really like this car, and this car does come across as a natural upgrade from the Ford EcoSport. It really is a very promising SUV. Well, the good part about this car, of course, is the fact that you get these nicely perched up seats. You get a very good view of the road ahead, and along with that you have this huge glass area. The glass area on this car is really huge, which means that the cabin feels a lot bigger than it already is, and it feels like a very spacious and very roomy cabin. So as I just mentioned, if Ford does manage to bring this car into India sometime soon, or whenever they do, this car will, of course, be a strong seller because it promises quite a lot. One other thing which I've noticed about this car is its handling, and to be honest, Ford could teach a lesson or two to all its rivals when it comes to sheer handling as well as driving dynamics. The steering wheel is a typical Ford unit. It's very crisp and makes even a big car like this feel very agile. And even the suspension, for the brief bit that we have been driving it around, feels relatively sporty. Now remember, these big SUVs aren't meant for sporty handling, but even then, there is some fun to be had inside the Kuga. Well, so we haven't sampled the diesel engine on this car, but going by our experiences with most Ford TDCi motors, it should be a good engine and it should have good amounts of torque, which means that if you are someone who enjoys that odd trip up the hill, this car should not pose any problems. The petrol engine is very peppy, and being turbocharged means that there is plenty of performance on offer as well. The ride comfort is excellent in the city, with the car managing to soak in all the bumps, and it really does improve as the speeds rise. On the highway, when we reached speeds of around 100 kph, the car felt very stable and indeed rock solid as well. So overall, full marks to Ford for giving it a very compliant ride. While Ford hasn't confirmed any dates as yet for the launch of the new Kuga, we expect it to arrive only towards the second half of 2017, which means that if you're in the market for a car which is bigger than the EcoSport but slightly smaller than the Endeavour, then the Ford Kuga really is a very strong choice and definitely worth the wait. Well, so we've just stopped outside the city, and I have to say that our little drive in the Escape/Kuga really does come across as very impressive, and I have to say that Ford really needs to get this car to India, because this is a car which could really take the market by storm. Not only does it look smashing on the outside, even the cabin is very good. It's a very well built cabin, and it's a very enjoyable car to drive. So in terms of overall score, I think I'll give this car 2 thumbs up.